Hey, it's Carrie, and I would love if you shared your story with us. You're listening to Camouflage Beauty, a podcast of shared experiences for military and veteran women.
Hey, everybody. It is a brand new year and a brand new season. And today, as always, I have an amazing guest for you. What better way to kick off a new year than to talk about living the life that you want for yourself? Today, we're talking to our guest, KRISTIE GAUTHREAUX. We're talking about manifestation, really speaking into existence that life that you think you want for yourself. So, I know a couple of us have done it, but it's actually really possible. So if you're trying to do this or you're looking for some influence or some how do they get done, my guest today is going to tell us about her journey and hopefully you can learn something from her. So let's bring her on now. Hi.
Hello.
How are you? Welcome to the platform.
Oh, I'm so honored to be here. So honored. Can you hear me really good?
Yes, I can. You
Okay.
look great. I can hear you good.
Good.
And I
Yeah.
know my guests today are excited to learn more about you. So tell us a bit about yourself and where you're from.
There's a lot to tell. Well, I am KRISTIE GAUTHREAUX. Just turned 40 in November. Woohoo, big 4-0. I kind of felt like turning 40 was going to be, I don't know, like this grand experience, right? Because, I always heard about it, but I think I kind of hit 40 before I actually turned 40 because I kind of got older. I started hearing people say when you turn 40, you really just stop caring. You're just
Mm-hmm.
move and whatever it is you feel you're called to do, and you do it without worrying about people. And I kind of feel like I did that ahead of time. So when I turned 40, it was like, I'm 40.
So you were
Uh,
ready for 40.
I was ready, already prepared, right? Already prepared. I'm married, have 4 beautiful children, 20, 10, 8, and 5. When you have multiples, you start like, losing count. Let me see.
You
Wait, no,
forget their ages, their names. You're like, listen, I know I have 4 though. They're
right, I
all
have
accounted
4.
for.
Right. 21, 10, 8, and 5. All right, there we go.
So I know
Uh,
the 21-year-old right now is probably watching, like, really, mom, you forgot my age.
Look, I get dates mixed up. Okay, birthdays. I get names. It's kind of that Ronald. You know who I'm talking to. Like, just come, just you know what I mean. I live here in Prairieville, Louisiana. Recently retired from teaching. I was teaching for over 7 years, so very early retirement for me.
Mm-hmm.
And now I am an entrepreneur, full time ownership of Mask Off Publishing, and then I also do some coaching. That's kind of where the publishing company was birthed from because I originally was already coaching, and so it just kind of spent into something else, from there. But for the most part, that's what I'm doing full time, helping other people write. I call it Write for Their Lives, helping other people
Mm-hmm.
write for their lives, and then eventually turning those things into books. And if they're not coaching with me, but they are aspiring authors, we are just helping them publish their book, kind of like a concierge service for independent authors, is what Mascot Publishing does. And
Yeah.
and in all of that, the most important part of it is probably the ministry that I'm able to do through all of those channels. And so the ministry that I pour, not just on my family, but the people that I come in contact with when it comes to coaching and the authors that we publish, there's
Mm-hmm.
always opportunity for me to share the word of God or some type of inspiration or motivation through that. And so that's probably the biggest part of it all.
So first of all, that's a lot.
Yeah, I
Okay.
told you. I get it. It's a whole lot. And look, I left
I
out
love
like
it.
80% of some stuff.
But I
I try
love
to like
it.
make it into like this small paragraph. No, ma'am. There's
No,
like 80% I left off.
honey, and there is no need to be small here, okay? Because your path isn't small, your ministry isn't small, your impact
Yeah.
isn't small. So I'm excited that it's a lot for you. But let's
Yeah.
rewind a bit, okay? Because
Yeah.
you just first of all, you just retired from a whole profession and a whole career. But before that, there
Yeah.
was a point in time where you wore the uniform. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I joined the Navy at 17. I actually didn't really I would say, didn't really understand at the time what it meant to
Mhm.
I guess what it was going to mean for my family and what it really was going to mean for me. All I knew was I just want to get away from here. I grew up in the projects, and it was different in my household because growing up in the projects for everyone else was, um, it was like a black thing, at that time in the area where I was. But my mom didn't grow up around, and she didn't grow up in poverty. My grandfather is Mexican and white. My mom's favorite artist is Elvis. You know what I'm saying? And she grew up in Maryland. So so when they moved back down to Louisiana, because my grandmother was originally from here, my grandmother and grandfather, when they moved back down, my mom was already, teenager. And so a lot of the things she learned growing up, she made sure that my sister and I learned. And it was very different, a very different culture from those who were around me, right? And
Mhm.
so I listened to different music. We watched musicals, black and white musicals, classicals, okay, westerns. And so where other people were watching like Martin and things like that, I was probably watching like, I don't know, I couldn't even tell you the names of them, right? Just some random
Mhm.
was
Mhm.
interested in, and we just grew to like them. And so the culture was different inside my house, but I wanted, to be like the other kids, but just could never fit in. And it got to a point where it was like, I'm just tired of all this. Like, I just want to be as far away as possible. And my brother told me, my brother on my dad's side, he said, I'm going to the Navy. And I was like, oh, what does that mean? Do you get to travel? Like, do you get to leave from here? What?
Can I go away?
And I was like, so something I can do, like, what do you do? And he said, he talked to the recruiter, you go to boot camp and all this stuff. And he was like, yeah, you get to travel. And I was like, oh, okay, well, sign me up. Like, what I need to do? He was like, well, I'm gonna give you my recruiter's number. And we were at two different schools at the time. And so I called his recruiter and he said, well, I'm not the recruiter for your school, but I can see if maybe I can get you on if we do the buddy program. I was gonna go in with my brother. Girl, we signed up everything, went to the MEP station, chose our jobs and everything. I was going to be operations specialist second class. And no, he was operations specialist second class, but I was going into operations specialist because of him, my recruiter, because he's like, oh, it's the best job to have.
Of
You
course.
you work in the cool air, you don't have to get
Mhm.
dirty and all this good stuff. And my brother went into air traffic control, but we were set to leave at the same time, and that was May. We were graduating, and the recruiter said, well, there's no openings for school, so y'all are going to have to wait until September. We're like, okay, bet. I'm going to just finish my job. I was a assistant manager at Subway, so I'm like, oh, I'm in there, like, I'm young manager, I'm
Mhm.
do this. And girl, my brother came like end of June, and he's like, hey, we can leave in July if you want. And I'm like, that's right around the corner. I don't want to leave in July. Like, I'm already working, I'm saving me up some money.
Mhm.
Like, well, I'm gone, girl. Buddy program, that little buddy thing went out the window. He left me. So he went in July and I went in September, and it was life changing. Do you hear me? Like, new birth in so many areas, right? Meeting different people. I mean, just everything was different. But
Mhm.
I think because of my upbringing, I was able to adapt, but I was very stubborn at the same time. So even though I learned to adapt, there were many times I did not want to. And so I was
Mhm.
forced to do it, right? It was just forced to do it. And battle stations and boot camp was probably my first, the first situation I experienced where I had to be forced to do something, because we had to do like this last lap of obstacle courses and running. And I was like, well, I'm tired. I'm not doing it. And they were running past me. They were like, you can't just stop right here. You got to keep going. And I'm like, nah, I'm done.
I'm
Like,
not.
I don't want to do it. I want to just, nah, I'm done. I want to just go back and go to sleep. I'm tired, man. I'm not
Oh
doing
my
it. And
gosh.
so the RTP runs up to me and he's running in place, and because I'm like slow walking now. And he's like, you got to keep going. If you don't keep going, I'm going to fail you. You're going back to the ship. And I'm like, you don't even have to do all that. Girl, I turn around and walk back. Okay. Not knowing, not knowing I was going to do it all over again.
Oh yeah. Oh
So
yeah.
I went back to the ship. I take this long shower, girl. I'm sitting by the racks. I'm chilling. I'm waiting on them to come back, and they're like, "Yeah, you need to pack your stuff up because you got to run with another division." And I'm like, "Run when? Oh, you got to run it tonight." So, girl, I had just come
Oh.
from running all night with my division. Had to run all night. That next night, and I realized, though, me deciding to not do what I was supposed to do at that time bear the consequences of both good and bad, right? Good thing was the people I ran with were a whole lot more motivating. I felt the team effort, and I was more encouraged to do it. Bad thing was I was exhausted, first of all. Second of
Mm-hmm.
all, I missed my orders because I was
Mm.
set to leave out the day that I had to run battle stations. So my spot closed up. I ended up going into like waiting, temporary assigned orders, had to go on hold. And so, just kind of pushed back my time of going in school and things like that. And so there were consequences on both ends. But again, adapt, keep going. But as time went on, I realized that the ability to adapt that I learned at an early age really helped me throughout my career in the military because I quickly moved up. When situations would, come up, you kind of got to make that quick decision of are you going to do it or you're not going to do it. And there's always well, if you don't do it, something's going to go wrong.
Yep.
Being able to quickly make those decisions and develop some self-discipline kind of put me in a place of, new things are happening. It's okay if it changes. Just figure out how to continue to adapt, accept it, move on. And it just
Yeah.
built my confidence. I moved from, of course, went in as an E1, but by the time I finished my school, I was already in E4 because I graduated second in my class. So I was able to
Nice.
advance. And then by the time I got to my ship, maybe about 2.5 years in, I moved to E5. And that was my first time taking the test as well. And so, and having good evals and things like that, all of those
Mm-hmm.
things was just, I feel like it was just me adapting to whatever
Mm-hmm.
situation it was. Whatever they threw at me, it was like, okay, I'm going to figure out how to work that out. I'll figure out how to make that work. And eventually, it just came down to a personal choice with family. My
Mm-hmm.
professional career was good, but then I had my son early. Um, my husband and I were separated because I got married early. And when we separated, that was a big thing. And it was like, now I have to figure out, do I stay with the military and sacrifice my personal life? Or do I
Mm-hmm.
move into taking on my personal life first and
Mm-hmm.
sacrificing this career? And decided, okay, I'm going to go ahead. If I can't get the orders I want, I'm going to go ahead and separate when it's time to reenlist. I'm not going to do it. And so 6 years in, came time for reenlistment, couldn't get the orders I wanted. And I was like, all right, I'm out.
Deuces.
They really thought I was coming back
You
though.
play. Yep.
60
Like you
days.
playing. She ain't serious. She'll be back. She'll be back.
Right. I took my 60 days of leave. I'm like, I'm chilling. I really didn't even like take, I guess because I was younger too. I didn't take those 60 days to like think about, well, what is my next move? Or girl, I didn't do any of that. I was just like chill mode, hanging out, spending my money, like doing
Mm-hmm.
no plans. But maybe like the second to the last day of my leave, I thought about it and was like, wait, am I re-enlisting or am I getting out? You know
It's
what?
kind of
I'm
late
getting out.
now.
I'm getting out. I went to the ship, turned in my stuff, and a couple of the people I work with, they saw me and they were like, "Okay, so what'd you decide? You staying there? We know you staying there. You want that re-enlistment bonus?" And I'm like, "Nah,
Yeah.
I need to start raising my child.
Yeah.
Like, I can't do this because all of the orders that I was getting were ships that were either already out and they hadn't been out, but maybe like a month or two. So I would have to do an extra 6 months out to sea, or they
Mm.
were about to go out. And at this time, they had changed the deployments from 6 months to 8 months. And so I just decided, like, I'm not about to go right back out and be away from my son another eight
Yeah.
months. So I just decided not to reenlist. But when I tell you it was a rebirth for me, it was a rebirth. I realized when I got out and eventually came back home that I was a totally different person. Now, mind you, I was already different growing
Mm-hmm.
up, and people saw the differences. But even in the person that I was then, I had become someone else after the military. It was like this birth, it was like shedding skin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yep.
several phases we go through in life. It was like shedding skin. And so I come back home thinking, um, well, I know I'm different, but in some way I'll find somewhere, to kind of fit in now. I'm an adult and I still didn't fit in.
Yep.
I didn't find a place. It was like, oh, I guess I'm even more different now. And so don't know what I do from here, but I was grateful for it. But it's a very lonely place though when you realize that you've always thought differently,
Mm-hmm.
and your decisions have always, or my decisions were always made based on what I thought and what I felt, and not really, and personal, not really on what everybody else was thinking or feeling or wanted me to do. I always kind of kept that idea of, no, I'm just doing what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom
Mm-hmm.
said all the time, well, I'm gonna tell you this, but I know you're gonna do what you want to do
Right.
anyway.
Right.
And I did. And I did.
And that's okay. And you know what, though? I love that you said that. That's beautiful in its own way, right? Because a lot of times in the military, people sometimes will make you feel like if you didn't do 20 years or 30, right, that you couldn't have gone through the rebirth, or you
Yep.
didn't get the military feel on you. That's a
Yep.
whole lot. I'm
Yep.
telling you that right now. Once
Yep.
you have gone through the initial, basic training process,
Yep.
that's it. You
That's
are
it. Oh, girl.
indoctrinated, and you are part
Everything.
of. Listen, this is now a part of your blueprint. I mean, think
Yeah.
about it. They literally teach you how to walk differently, how to talk, think differently. And
Yep.
so, yeah, I don't think most people actually see that though until they get out. That's when you really
Yep.
start to realize there's something different about you.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
you're always different. And, like you said, you could be stubborn from time to time. So now you're out the military, young family. What is your plan? How did you get into your next career?
Oh, let's see. No plan. Let's start there. Didn't really have one. I did not really have a plan. Like so I had my son. I was in a relationship. We were saying we were going to get married. I was going to get remarried. And so that just went south because what it was too, because there was another transition and all of that. So like right before I decided to separate, I started growing closer to God, like just started spending more time in my Bible, praying more. Hadn't really started a church yet, but definitely had just started spending more time with God. And when I got out, I was in the relationship, and my fiance and I, were just talking about different life moves that we wanted to make. And as the months went on, I decided, well, let's just practice celibacy. Like, let's not have sex until, we get married. And of course, that like made everything hard, right? For the relationship, because I was like, no, no, no. And he's like, yes, yes, yes. And so that turned into a big ordeal. And somewhere along the line, we kind of lost that single mindedness of what we wanted in a marriage. And so I was pretty focused on, I want to get closer to God. I want to start living how he wants me to live. And he was kind of going the opposite way. And so that relationship didn't work out. But I realized then, because I was already getting closer to God, I was like, I want to go to ministry school. So it wasn't really a plan. I just kind of thought, I want to go to ministry school. I want to go to Bible college, right? I just want to get closer to God. I want to learn more about him. And I started seeking out, different ministries that offered ministry schools. I started looking for Bible colleges, but mind you, I was a single parent at the time. And so a lot of the colleges I found didn't have placement for single moms or single parents. And so I couldn't go to the Bible colleges that were convenient to where I was located at the time. And so after a while, just kind of left it up to God. I was like, well, if it's meant for me to go, I'll go. Left it alone. And one day I hear him say, go back home. And I'm like, go back home? Can't be talking about go back to Louisiana. Like, I know that it's not God.
Let me hear that voice again.
Like, Lord, I know I've heard you up until this point, but this cannot be you speaking, right? And so I kind of ignored it for a
Of
minute.
course.
I was like, no, not Louisiana. But then eventually, I talked to my sister, and she's like, oh, you got to come visit this church with me whenever you come home to visit. And I'm just like, Lord, I keep hearing this thing about home. And then eventually I just decided, all right, I'm going to listen, right? God and I have this relationship where it's like, he knows he has to tell me to do something, because if anybody else tell me, I'm not going to listen. She's just that stubborn. So finally, I just made the decision. Okay, Lord, well, I feel like this is what you tell me to do. I'm just going to do it. And I decided to move back home. And my sister invited me to the church that nobody else wanted to attend at the time. And so I go, and I'm like, I'm not going to go in skeptical. I'm going to go in with an open mind. If this is where you want me to be, I'll know. Like, I'll know. I have that peace. You'll confirm it. And I get there, don't remember the sermon, but I remember the Lord pulling me to join the church. So I joined the church and everything's, good. And we're getting ready to leave. And we get in the truck and she says, they have a ministry school and I'm going. Do you want to go? And I was like, they have a ministry school. And she didn't even know, I had been looking for one like months prior. And so I'm like, oh, this is where the Lord wants me to be. I'm all excited about it. And I'm like, I'm going to that ministry school. And I think that is when I started actually planning some things, when I actually started to say what it was that I truly wanted and then expecting them to happen, right? Because when I said, and it was really because God had shown me I had that desire and then had been looking and then I left it alone. And then he manifested, like he just showed up for me. It was like, hey, boom, they got a ministry school at this church. And it was like him showing himself to me. And I was just like, oh, wait. Well, if that worked, I might need to start putting some other things in place.
Right. Let me start asking for some other things.
I need to start being more intentional, right? And so that's when I actually started becoming like more intentional about the things that I said, and my way of thinking. I finally, at some point over the last year or two, kind of gave it like a wording. I made it into a quote. Like, if I think like God and God thinks like me, that means that we think alike. And if we think alike, then we manifest together. That means I'm not doing anything outside of what he didn't already want for me, right? We're manifesting this thing together. And the scripture that I like to pair with that is God gives us the desires of our heart. And I know that some people see that scripture and they're thinking, well, he'll give us the desires of our heart. So we desire it, he'll give it. But my interpretation of that is he puts the desire in us first because he's desiring it for us. And when we come into agreement with it, then we do this together. So whatever it is that we desire, he puts it in us. Like he's like, hey, I want you to want this because I want it for you. And then when you believe that he wants you to want it with him, then it's like, all right, we can make this happen. And
come on now.
I didn't have a word for it at first, but it was just how things were unfolding. And when that ministry school came into play, I was like, oh, well, yeah, I'm going. If the opportunity is there, I'm going. But when so I just moved back home, I didn't have a job yet, right? And so I'm like looking for a job. I'm like, I'm going to pay for that ministry school. This was like July, August. School started in September. And I'm like, I'm still not working. And I started thinking about, well, what job do I want? I need to figure out what it is I want to do. And I started just putting in applications. And then finally, I said, well, you know what? I think I'm going to go into teaching. And it was something my mom had kind of been telling me over the years. You should be a teacher or a nurse. You should be a teacher or a nurse. And I think my subconscious recorded it. And eventually, it came back out. And I'm like, okay, well, if I want to be a teacher, let me just start getting some experience. Right. And so I was like, I'm going to work at a preschool. And again, my mindset now was, well, if I desire this thing and God is desiring this too, we gonna manifest this thing. And so I was like, I want to work at a daycare, a preschool, nowhere else. And I put in my application and I go in for my first interview and the lady's like, all right, well, if we decide to hire you, we'll call you. So we can have passed. My mom comes in and she's like, I don't know what you're waiting on, but you need to go work somewhere. I don't care if you go to Home Depot, but you need to get a job. You got a child, you got to get a job. And I'm like, I'm going to work at that daycare I went and did that interview at. I'm not going to apply anywhere else. I already made up my mind. She is going to call me back. And my mom is like, if she ain't called you back yet, you do not have that job. I was like, oh, yes, I do. She don't call me back. Because I'm knowing this is what I desired. I believe Lord desired this with me. I'm going to work there. And mind you, ministry school is getting ready to start. I really need a job and I need this money.
ASAP.
Okay. And so that matter in that day, that last day she came in that room, she was like, you gonna go to the unemployment office or something? And I was like, I'm not going. She walked out of the room. No lie, the house phone rang, right? I pick up the house phone. It is the lady from the center calling me back to do a second interview with the assistant director. She was like, if this interview goes well, you got the job. We'll just take you on a tour of the building and everything, talk to the kids, get acquainted with the other teachers. She was like, just come in. I didn't even tell my mom, right? I didn't want to just be like, see, I told you so. I didn't say anything to her. And so I go in for the interview. Everything is good, but I couldn't start right away. So still no money.
Oh no.
September, the beginning of September roll around, school is starting, and my sister's like, "Well, did you get the money yet?" No, don't know where to get it from. And so I was like, "Well, I'm still gonna go with you because maybe somebody at a gas station will give it to me, right? Girl, my faith is in this, right? I'm in this to win it. Like I ain't
For real, that mustard seed faith.
right? So I'm like, look, I don't know, maybe somebody at the gas station. So we don't even have to stop for gas. So we get to the parking lot at church, and I'm like, maybe I'm gonna find it when I open up the car door. Like I'm gonna get out and it might be in the parking lot. Or maybe somebody gonna walk up and be like, I'm gonna give you the money to go to ministry school. I was like, my faith is in this. I believe God wants this for me. So girl, I get out the car, no money in the parking lot.
Right. Where's the work? The faith and the work.
So I told my sister, I said, look, they had choir rehearsal the same night. I said, well, maybe the Lord wants me to sing in a choir. So I'll go to choir rehearsal and you go to orientation. And and I'm just gonna leave it like that. I say I'm just gonna let it just be in his hands. So I go to choir rehearsal, she goes to orientation, I'm still in choir rehearsal. She comes in and she's calling me off the stage. She's like, come here, come here. I gotta tell you something. So I get down and she's like, girl, you're not gonna believe it. And I was like, what? She said, for the first time since they had the ministry school open, they have decided to allow people to come to school for the first 2 to 3 weeks of classes. And if they decide that they like it, they can enroll. And she said, you can do it with no pay. I was like, shut up, girl. We ran around that.
Oh, that was for you.
I was like, oh, they might have thought that they were doing it for whoever else, but God will change the mind of some people. Okay, He will change the whole organization if He needs, just to accommodate you. And so, I mean, girl, we shouted and everything. I don't know for how long. We got in that truck. We shouted all the way back to the house, and I was just so amazed, right, at me saying it and desiring it. And even when I didn't see it happening, it was happening, right? I didn't see the money showing up, but the fact that the money hadn't showed up wasn't the like the thing that said yes or no. It was the fact that God was doing some things I couldn't see, like changing somebody's mind to change the rules of how school runs. And so I mean, from that point on, it was just like, well, whatever I desire and whatever I speak is going to happen. If God wants it for me, then I'm going to want it and it's going to happen. And I can't be convinced otherwise. And I will tell you, like, joining that ministry school, ended up meeting one of the professors, which was at the time, he was kind of like right under assistant pastor. And so I went to do some counseling with him. And he said, he asked me, he was like, you ever met my son? And I'm thinking, I do not want to meet your son. That is not why I came in here. I don't want to talk to you about your son. Like, why are you trying to hook me up? That's not
right.
Talking about that. And so I left it. I was just like, whatever, left it alone. And then 6 months later, I talked to him again. He's like, you still hadn't met my son? And I'm thinking, sir,
I do not want to meet your son.
I want to meet your son. Girl, so, and I'm not knowing the whole time he's trying to hook me up with his son. His son is watching me. Didn't even know. Had no idea. And so son is watching me. Dad is trying to hook us up without him knowing or me knowing, right? That it's the same person that's watching. And so 4th of July, 2008, I graduated in May of 2008. And 4th of July, well, the day before 4th of July, he called me. His dad called and said he wanted to know if it was okay. Did he have my phone number? And so we ended up on the phone. And I found out he had been watching me for about 6 months. And his dad, he didn't even know his dad had been talking to me. But he said he went up to his dad to talk to him about me and was like, there's this girl that I want to approach or whatever, but she has a son. And he kind of wanted to get some advice from his dad. And he said, well, that's this girl, I really want you to meet her. She's a really nice girl. She just graduated ministry school. And she has a son. His dad knew both our names. Like the dad knew my name and my son's name, my husband now. His son didn't know he didn't know my name, but he knew my son's name because he worked in the children's church with him. And he said, well, her son's name is Derek. And my father-in-law now said, oh, well, the girl that I really want you to meet, her name's KRISTIE. but her son's name is Derek too. And he started describing me to his dad. And
Wow.
the whole time it was me. But it gets better than that because he's watching me. And he said the whole time he was watching me, he kept just saying, I just want to meet her and take her out. Like, I'm not trying to be in a relationship or anything. I just want to meet her and take her out. Well, 2 months into this, it's not really a full relationship. We hadn't called ourselves boyfriend and girlfriend or anything. I'm talking to him about just different things. We're learning each other. And I noticed when we first started talking that he had been talking about dialysis. He was on dialysis. And I'm just like, well, I don't really understand what dialysis is. And so I didn't want to bring it up right away. So, some months in, we started having this conversation about it. And he tells me, what it's about and why he's on it. And I'm asking, well, how do you get off? And he's like, well, someone can donate a kidney or God can heal me. And I was like, oh, so you got to wait on somebody to die, if they're going to donate. He was like, no, you could be a living donor. He's like, everybody have two and you can donate one and live off of one. And I was like, oh, really? I was like, oh, well, I mean, I got two. I'll just give you one of mine. I just said it like calm, like that. And he's like, wait, no, it doesn't work like that. Like, you can't just give somebody one. And I was like, oh, well, I mean, what you got to do? He was like, you got to be a match. I was like, okay, well, my blood is O positive. He's like, no, not like that. Y'all, I'm like clueless, right? Because I'm just thinking, well, you just say it.
You need one.
Mm-hmm. You just said you need one, right? That's all I heard.
I got two. You need one. What's the problem?
Ain't it that simple? And he's like, no, you got to go through like all these tests. And I was like, okay, well, just give me, whatever I need to figure out if I'm a match. And he gives me this number to call the number, start the process. And his dad, once he told his dad was like, well, this is a really big thing. So you need to pray about it. Make sure that's something, that God wants you to do. And, talk to your mom about it or whatever. But like I told you, my mom was like, did the Lord tell you? She was like, because you're going to do what you want to do anyways. She was like, did the Lord tell you? And I was like, yeah, I believe the Lord said it's okay. And she was like, well, if you believe the Lord told you, then okay. She didn't argue with it or anything. And so I pray about it. And when I prayed, I believe the Lord told me, yeah, I gave everybody two, but I gave you two to give him one. And I think for me, that was like a confirmation because Lord knew like, well, she'll do it on her own and she'll trust me. Or if she hear me say it, she'll do it. I'm not going to do what somebody else might, tell me. But if I know that God is with me on it, it's happening. Like I'm figuring we manifesting this thing, it's happening. And so I was that convinced when I heard him say that. I was like, oh, well, boom, it's happening. Now, mind you, I had just met him. I had been at the church 2 years.
That part.
We weren't even from the same area. Like
right.
I literally grew up like 45 minutes away from where he was. He lived out in the country. I live more Baton Rouge City, like. And so we didn't go to school together, never heard of their names, had never even heard of the church we met at, like didn't know anything. I come from Florida. I had been away for 6 years. I come 6 years from being away from Louisiana, moved back and get invited to this church that a year in, my sister left me. So she started ministry school with me, but she left. She got married and she moved away. But I just been at this church by myself. He's watching me. The dad is watching me. And he's thinking he just wants to take me out when the whole time the Lord is like, no, there's a kidney in her body that's going to preserve your life. It's going to extend your life. I ended up being a match. We started talking. So I met him July 4th is when we actually got to see each other and realize, oh, okay, like, oh, so this is who it is, And so that was July 4th. November, I started the testing. March of the following year, we were doing the transplant. And so in all of that, it was a God thing, right? It was just, I said, okay. The Lord was like, okay, all right, it's happening. And it went, when I tell you, it was a smooth surgery. Everything went as planned, no hiccups. I mean, there was nothing extra, like it was just smooth. And the doctors were amazed because, they were like, we get family members in here that aren't matches. And here you are, a complete stranger that came out of nowhere and you're a match. And I'm telling people, how it happened, like, oh, no big deal. Because in my mind, I'm just like, I mean, well, I said that I was going to give him one. And I know the Lord was okay with me giving him one. So why wouldn't it happen? So for me, it was just like, I mean, wouldn't it just happen? And then for other people, it's like, oh my God,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I would have had the faith. And it's a faith thing, but I really and truly am convinced that when you set your mind to something and you really believe that it's what God wants for you too, it happens.
Mm-hmm.
It happens. And what is there to argue, with
Mm-hmm.
when you know that y'all are thinking alike? And so y'all can manifest that thing together.
Yeah.
But girl, in that is when I think my life took another transition. It was like some shedding of some other skin and really becoming more confident in the things of God, being confident in my words, because that's when I really started paying more attention. Like I was already intentional about what I was thinking and
Mm-hmm.
intentional about what I was speaking, but then I really believe that my words then became like a matchup with his, because I could say something, girl, and it would happen. I would think
Wow.
it and it would happen. And so it just kind of from there, just and life still happen. Things,
Of
still
course.
throw you off. But if there was ever a time when I needed to really I guess like go in my prayer closet, like if some like one time my husband got sick and it was like one of those times where you feel like I should probably be, praying and pleading to God right now. But
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't, even in those times, it was like, well, I believe everything's going to be okay. Lord, you believe everything will be okay? Well, I guess everything will be okay.
Listen.
And it wasn't that simple all the time, but my mindset was there. So so my mindset would be on, it was that simple, even though like physically it may not have felt that way, right? Like there were some times when it's like, I don't see it happening, but my mind was so convinced that it's still happening that even when I didn't see it, I just knew it's
Yeah.
happening. It hadn't happened yet. Oh, but it's coming. It's coming. And just having that expectation, oh, it's coming. Okay, it still ain't came. It's a year later. That's all right. It's still coming. It's still coming. And then when it comes, there's not like this. I'm never surprised, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
my expectation is always there.
Mm-hmm.
So never getting in a place where it's like, oh my God, I didn't know. No, it's
Yep.
like, yep, I knew he was gonna show up.
Yep.
Expectation. Yep.
That is, first of all, I mean, it's so much to unpack in there. Like I don't even know, but I do know that you guys end up getting married, so you guys
Yep.
share a life of family and kidneys,
Yeah.
and that.
Right.
I mean, you're right. I agree with the doctors. There are people who are related by blood who don't have a match. There are people
Mhm.
who are family who never offer to give a
Yep.
kidney to save someone's life. So you guys were meant for each other, and you had to get out the Navy for that to happen, for you
Yeah.
to move from Florida. And so I love what you say. You had to start being very intentional with your thoughts and your words and what you did. And but that faith right there is what I'm trying to get, because honey, I'm trying to manifest these things, but Jesus is like, that's not what I want for you. So we're gonna work on that. We're gonna work on that in 2022. But
Yes.
all of that goes into what you kind of do now as a coach, and among other things. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So a lot of that goes into my coaching. Even though I just made all of that sound so simple, it's always been work, right? Faith without works is there. It's always been work. It's always been um, trying times, right? It's not like, even though I said, oh, it happened, it seems so easy. There's always been some trial in there. And through all of the trial, there's also been traumas. Right. And so I had a traumatic childhood, lots of things that, I didn't even go into. It's just a lot. But things that you experience in poverty and some things that people experience even outside of poverty. There was trauma. And then going into my teenage years, trauma, becoming an adult and just going through things in my adulthood as a single mom. And then in my relationship that was ending, even in my marriage, even though, giving the kidney, it just sounds like, oh, well, everything was great after that. It wasn't. So there was trauma even in the marriage. But in all of that, I realized that my trauma never took over my mindset. I had one week really of feeling like kind of low. And then there was a day where I felt like I separated from God, and it was a really dark place I felt for me. And I had like that one moment of even thinking about suicide. And I believe that because of all of the trauma that I experienced, and then that leading up to that one moment where I'm actually thinking about taking my life, I had to go through those things because God wanted me to be that sounding board and that mouthpiece for other people. Because I realized the reason why I hadn't lost my mind in all of it, the reason why I became sane over insane many times, the reason why I was able to triumph over my traumas and my trials was because I always communicated how I felt about the situation. And in the communication, it wasn't necessarily me always talking to someone, but I did a lot of writing. Um, from childhood, I would rewrite my narrative, girl. I would rewrite my story the way I wanted it to go. I would see myself doing different things. And even into adulthood, I would always just write. And I would write in a way that if I was giving it to someone else, it would be like my advice to them, right? Or if I was writing some story, I would just rewrite it in the way that there's victory in the end. And I believe that that is what kept me sane. It's the thing that kept me out of depression. It's the thing that kept me from being diagnosed because of all the things I had gone through. And then I realized, you know what? Like, if this works for me, then I know it'll work for other people. I've literally been writing for my life all of these years. Like, literally writing was saving my life every time. The fact that I communicated what I was feeling, got it off my mind, stopped me from having anxiety. It would stop the panic attacks, right? Anytime I was feeling overwhelmed or stressed out, just taking myself to another place and creating an atmosphere and an environment that really didn't exist, but it existed in my mind, would give me another perspective and change my mindset. It would put me right back into where I could move forward and not stay in the past and not stay in my feelings. That really would is what keeps us, in that area of illness, of having some type of mental upset and being unwell, mentally. And so when I realized that that's what I've been doing and that's what saved my life, it was like, well, I got to help other people. I got to figure out a way, Lord, to help other people do this. The minute I opened myself up to saying, I'm going to help other people, the people started coming. When I started investing in what it was I wanted to do, like help getting someone to help me figure out how to word that. How do I talk to people about it? Let them know how I can help them. Um, how do I put all that together? I invested in myself to get someone to show me how to do it, and the people just started coming. I ended up just being able to coach people while they were either going through whatever the trauma was or being able to help them tell their story without having to get into the details. Because sometimes, things can be so traumatic that when you retell, you get those emotions, they all come back up. And I feel like when you get emotional all over again, when you're telling the story, then you haven't really overcome that. You know what I'm saying? You're not really in a better place. You still maybe have a little bitterness in there, a little bit of resentment, a little bit hurt, something still in there that has that wound a little agitated. And so it's not a good time to really do a full retell, right? But there is a way to continue to keep that wound closed and allow it to keep healing if you just talk about the good things around it, how maybe you can guide someone else on a path of avoiding that situation so that it doesn't happen. Maybe it's giving them clarity on what to look for, to prevent it. It's things like that. And so being able, and I call it telling your story without telling your business, being able to tell that story without telling your business really puts you in a place of healing, or it helps you to sustain your healing. And so you become mentally healthy versus unwell. And so, I mean, just saying, okay, I'm ready, just open the doors. And then from the coaching, I had already kind of was like, I'm gonna publish my own books under Mask Off Publishing. But then coaching other people and realizing they needed help with publishing, I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe I can really make this an actual business and start helping people publish their books. And again, once I decided, well, I'm intentional about it, this is what I'm doing, start putting some things in place, it just started happening. The minute even for my publishing company, the minute I put a team in place, I became intentional about the business, seriously had a plan for it, and was like, all right, Lord, I believe this is what you want me to do. How are we doing it? Got that team. The first team call we had, we got off at like 8 at night. 9 o'clock, I had someone in my inbox asking to help publish a book. They didn't even know I had a team in place, right? And so that became our first client. And from that first client, and that was because we really, like, I got my team in place recently in August, even though I had been coaching since like this is 2021, like 2019 is when I really like started helping people, but hadn't really gotten too much into the publishing for other people.
Yeah.
And then I started kind of helping them publish last year, but then this year I was like, okay, I'm gonna take it serious. August, got the whole team together, like, vetted everybody, contracts, get on the call, everything. And end of August, first client. By the time we hit the beginning of November, we were already at 4 clients. And so now we have 6, and that's just from August to December with no advertisement. We haven't even advertised. That's really just like word of mouth. And it moved, I believe it moved slow enough for us to all get used to what it was we're going to be doing. Understanding this is making sure we have the systems in place. And then from here, it's just going to go boom. Right? Like you don't want it to come too fast. I need it to come. We know what we're doing, systems in place. We know how to communicate with each other, with the client, helping them get it done. And January, by the end of January, we'll roll out 4 of the 6 books, February, the other 2. But I'm really believing, but from 2022 on, it's going to be, constant. I'm probably going to end up having to get some more people. But I mean, when you really become intentional about it, and then too, this is a big thing. I say we write for our lives, but it's most important that we understand we write for the life of others. Anything that I put out or that I help other people put out, I have to remember that I'm only standing behind what's going to help someone else. Right. And I think that when we set out to be intentional about the things that we do in life, whether it is writing or maybe it's styling, maybe it's branding, maybe it's speaking, maybe it's building some things, whatever it is you set out to do, that other people, and the health of other people and how it's going to benefit them should always be like that foundation, right? Not to say you forget about yourself, because self is automatically there.
Yeah.
But you need to understand that people are connected to it. And if you see that people are connected to it, then you'll always work in creativity and not in competition. You'll be thinking about what creative way can I do this that'll bring my audience to me. I don't need to compete with anybody else. We all have our own unique abilities, right? It's different than yours. And so we can both be podcasting, but we're not going to talk the same. We're not going to cover the same subject. My way of looking at it is not going to be the same as yours. We're 2 different people. And if we understand that our creative abilities are what bring people to us, that's what draws people to us, then we don't need to compete. And if you keep that as your foundation, you grow, because you're always tapping into the creativity. You're always tapping into, well, what is it God put in me to do the way I should do it for those who are assigned to me?
That's
like,
right.
I don't need your people.
I got my own assignment.
Right. There are some people divinely assigned to my assignment.
Yeah.
Right. They're just for me. And so if I know that those people, and it's 2-sided. If I know that those people are just for me, then I don't need to compete. And if I know that those people are just for me, that means I cannot become complacent because they're waiting on me to show up.
Come on, sis.
Like, you can't be complacent, right? Because some people like, well, where you at?
We didn't plan on, for everyone out here.
I've been waiting on you. Like,
we didn't plan on preaching today, but we figured we was just going to drop a little bit of the messages and nuggets on y'all for y'all toolboxes. I hope y'all are writing this down. This is real.
This
is real talk right here.
It's real.
My God.
It's real. It's so real. You got to know that there are people waiting on you to show up. And so you got to tap into what it is you can do, which is one of the things that really helped me when I'm coaching clients, and really just in general when I'm talking to people. Don't worry about who else is doing it. If it's in you to do it, then you do it your way. You don't even have to see how they're like, you don't even have to research how they're doing it. You
Not
do
at
it your
all.
way, and the people will show up because they're already waiting on you.
Yeah.
They're they there. They're waiting on you to show up.
Yeah.
And
You
talking about where the
right.
people at. They talking about, well, where you at?
Girl, you know how many times I was gonna quit podcasting? People be like, what? Where you going? I'm coming. I'm like, oh, I guess I gotta keep this open so you'll be here, so you have somewhere to
Yes.
go. That
Yes.
that definitely resonated with me. You're 100% right. You ain't gotta look to your left or your right. You just show up. You show up and live in your own lights. It'll come. It'll come.
Yes.
I love that. Well, we are getting ready to wrap up, and I was going to ask you for your words of encouragement and inspiration to everybody. But that in itself that you just talked about, just in this entire episode about just living in your, I like to call it in your glow, and being intentional about who you are, what you speak, what you want, and putting in that work. I mean, that it's almost like if I could have dropped the mic, I would have dropped the mic, because that's it. We've already done everything that we can possibly touch on today. But since we are getting to wrap up, and it is what we do here at the Camouflage Beauty platform, this is your opportunity to speak to those women out here who are listening, just haven't yet found their glow, looking for that thing that they can do to live in their purpose, or that push to go forward, not really understanding how to manifest their life. What would you say to those women listening today?
I would say, one, and this is going to be very practical. I like to give practical advice. You can do this right now. Okay. Turn off your media, whether it's your TV or your cell phone, wherever you are getting your information from, turn it off. If you got to do it if you got to do a 3-day fast, just turn it off. And I say that because, and that's really the one thing it's two things, but that's the one thing that's going to set you above everything else and take you where you want to go. Turn the media off, because if everybody else is talking to you, if you're watching everybody else, you're going to lose yourself and what you should be doing and how you should be doing it. So turn off everybody else, turn off everything else. You don't want to see it or hear it. And then secondly, put in the time to find out who you are in God, so that then y'all can start doing things together. Because when you're in your media, you're finding out who you are in other people. How would you do that? You'll even find yourself saying, well, child, if that was me, I would, but that's not you. If I was on the podcast, I'd say, oh, I would have asked, that's not you. If I was on TV, I would have wore, that is not you. I don't care what it is. If it ain't you, you just leave it alone, let it go, and find out who you are by being by yourself. So the amount of time you would spend scrolling, just be like, I ain't scrolling. I'm just going to sit silently and really think about the gifts that are in me. And then when you figure out the gifts that are in you, and see, this is the thing, a lot of our gifts we're using as hobbies. A lot of the things we're interested in, it's a side job. A lot of the things we're interested in, we watch other people do it on YouTube and TV. If it's cooking and you spending hours watching somebody else cook, but you can do the same thing, I'm going to need you to turn them off and mind your business. Get into what God has put in you to do. All right. You connect to that. When you start connecting with what it is already in you to do, don't think about what nobody else says, what nobody else thinks, who else is doing it. You just start doing that thing that's in you to do. I believe that God, when he sent us here, put in us what it was we were meant to do. You maybe can go learn a little bit more to get better at it. Maybe there's some technique because somebody else has been doing it longer than you. Fine. But it's already in you to naturally do what you're supposed to be doing. And that's your wealth. God said to me one time, my wealth for you is in the middle of my will for you. His will for you is already in you. Your wealthy place is already in you. You just got to stop tuning into other people and tune into what's already in you and start doing that. If it's braiding hair, if it's cooking, if it's knitting, if it's building things, maybe you're an inventor, maybe you're really good with money and math, whatever it is that you're naturally good at, stop using that as a side job. Stop letting that be your hobby and figure out what God wants you to do so that it moves you from your hobby to the habit that brings you into your habitation, where is your wealthy place. That's all I got.
So I was backstage tearing up, right? Because listen, First of all, we are going to 100% have to have you back because your message to us is not complete. I feel it. We could go for another 2 hours. We have so
Good.
much more we could still
Girl,
talk
I could
about.
just be like, whoop, 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 whoop.
Listen, but we need that. I'm back here. Like, let me go backstage so I can take notes at the same time, right? This is being. You feel like you're being fed, and I love that. I love that. I love what you stand for. I love what you're doing. How can the people out here connect with you on social media?
So everywhere is my name. So I made it real simple. Okay, just real simple. It's KRISTIE F GAUTHREAUX. LinkedIn, KRISTIE F GAUTHREAUX, Instagram, KRISTIE F GAUTHREAUX, Facebook, KRISTIE F GAUTHREAUX. The only difference with Facebook is my business page, there's a period after F, like on the screen. But my personal page doesn't have a period, right? And then like alignable, there's a different places where I am, but KRISTIE F GAUTHREAUX is a GAUTHREAUX. Same thing with my email. It's KRISTIEFGAUTHREAUX@gmail.com. And then if it's the publishing company, it's maskoffpublishing.com or maskoffpublishing@gmail.com. So, it's in the name. It's very easy. And you can Google. Once you Google, there's several things, just over the years, I've made sure to just have that presence. And so if you just put in the name, there's always a way to contact me. I'm not ghosting anybody. You might even find my personal phone number on there.
Oh, Lord. Listen, don't call her. Just send her an email. Message her 2022 vibe. You know what I'm saying? Shoot her something on Twitter or something, but do not call her personal number, stalkers. But seriously, KRISTIE GAUTHREAUX, you are everywhere. We love what you're doing, the inspiration and the encouragement that you bring to me and other sisters in arms. Thank you so very much for joining us today. And again, like I said, you have to come back and sit in this chair with the platform.
I surely will. Whenever you have me, I'm ready.
Absolutely.
I'm ready.
All right, y'all. That is all from me today. And as always, until next time, be kind.
Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. You can find us on the book, IG, or Twitter. Email us your stories to camobeautystories@gmail.com. That's it for me, y'all. Until next time, be kind to your body, soul, and mind.